Cool.
How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. Just got back from vacation, and we spent a few days in Salt Lake City, and that was interesting. I don't have like a topic, but I thought I'd say a few words about that.
Mm-hmm. That's a big Mormon town.
That is a big Mormon town, and they have a huge temple downtown, which is beautiful architecture. And we were visiting some relatives up there, and I've been to Salt Lake City several times. I especially like the family history library because I'm real into genealogy and family history, so that is just an amazing place to go research. So I'm grateful that that's available. But had never really kind of gone around Temple Square and seen the different buildings, the old Mormon Tabernacle, and we toured it's called the Beehive House, which is where Brigham Young lived. And so we went on a little tour of that, and they kind of have it set up with period furniture, and none of it's original, but they kind of showed you what it looked like and where Brigham Young worked. And we were shown around by two nice young women missionaries. One was from Cambodia and one was from Thailand, and they had really thick accents that were hard to understand. But it seemed like most of the missionaries there were foreign young people.
So we send missionaries over to other countries, and then those other countries send their missionaries right back to us.
Yeah, it seems like
to preach in the godforsaken land of Salt Lake City.
Right, I guess.
Great.
But it was just kind of interesting. My wife grew up in Salt Lake, so she's been there many times, and we were touring the Brigham Young house, and everywhere we look, they present a real kind of generic Christian message. They don't really talk about Mormonism much, and that seems like that's something new. We were touring the house, and they were saying, okay, here's where Brigham Young worked, and he lived here with his wife and kids, and my wife kind of interrupted her and said, well, where did his other wives live? And she goes, oh, you heard about that. And she said, well, he lived with his first wife here, and the other wives lived in, next door in what they call the Lion House. And I ran and looked it up on Wikipedia afterwards, and that's not quite true, but basically that was kind of the quick answer. And she looked really uncomfortable. And then we walked around the visitor center, and that's all real generic too. There's a whole section of the North Visitor Center that has these big, like 4 by 6 foot paintings of scenes from the New Testament, and they have, Jesus's birth, and they have the Sermon on the Mount, and you go around in this circle, and they have the crucifixion and the empty tomb and the appearing before the disciples, and then at the end they have him ascending into heaven, and then right there's a staircase that goes up to the second floor, and that's all painted up to be like stars and like a starry night. So the idea is you're going up the stairs and you're ascending into heaven. And upstairs, it used to be years ago, my wife told me, when you went upstairs you got to see the Mormon stuff. So they have Jesus appearing in the Americas, and they have Joseph Smith finding the golden plates, and none of that's there anymore. It's all Old Testament stuff now upstairs. So it's
interesting. I remember during the last election there was some question about whether fundamentalist Christians would make a big deal about being represented by Mitt Romney, and I think the way they resolved that was pretty much to sort of whitewash and avoid talking about any details of Mormonism, and just have people sort of pleasantly nod and generically say, oh yeah, that's just Christian.
Yeah. So that makes sense. That maybe that's when the change happened. But it's all very kind of generic. Any Christian would come in and say, "Oh yeah, that's I can relate to that." So
right.
I just thought that was interesting that they present that face to visitors when there's a lot more to it than that. And I'm no expert on Mormon theology or anything, but
that's because you haven't watched the Book of Mormon musical.
That's right.
That'll tell you all the details about Brigham Young. Some of them maybe not quite true.
Okay.
I don't think his AIDS was cured by a magical frog. That's what they say in the play, though.
That's something I haven't had a chance to see yet. But anyway, so that was my experience there. There's also something going on in the Mormon called in the Mormon Church called ordain women, and that's a big thing going on right now, where they're trying to get the church to accept ordaining women. And from what I understand, the leader of that group just got what's the word when you're kicked out of the church? Excommunicated. I couldn't think of the word. Excommunicated for leading people astray. So that should be interesting.
Yeah.
We see if there, apparently there's a pretty big movement, and it might be something.
Well,
that
you
they have
know,
to
I
deal
mean,
with.
Catholics have been having the same fight over ordaining women, and I believe Baptists might have undergone yet another split because of the women thing.
Yeah.
I think we sometimes talk about religion being dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century because, you know, they have to coexist with the actual people that make up their ranks now.
Yeah, and they
So,
kind
I
of
mean,
change.
that's
change with
interesting that the
times.
Mormons are also going along with that, sort of.
Yeah, and I think they may be more than most, maybe other than the Catholic Church, are going to be the last ones to kind of to give in on that. But we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. So that's really all I had.
All right. Now, you
taking
didn't
calls.
get to go into the temple.
No, they won't allow anyone in there. So, but there's a whole temple square there with a lot of buildings, and you can walk around and kind of see the other buildings. But yeah, not the temple itself.
All right. Well, that sounds fun.